what up? Oh man. I might be backing the most amount of games that I've backed on crowdfunding in a long time right now simultaneously. I was not expecting right now this week to be this freaking explosive. This freaking jam-packed. Like I talked about it. I thought it was going to be second to last week. Let me be very clear. I think this has really the potential to be bigger than last week. Because, I mean, we had some big names launch last week, but we have breadth and depth now launching as well this week. And the freaking probably biggest name of them all, metaphorically speaking, Cthulhu is not the biggest name. Physically, literally speaking. You know where I'm going with this. It's the Liege humor if you like it from that standpoint. But crowdfunding this week, freaking ridiculous. Everything you need to know, all in one video. The guy who covers as much as possible, the guy that gives you all the in-depth news, releases thoughts on it, reading through all of the rule books, giving you as much information to help you make the decision that is best for you. Anti-hype guy right here. Let's do this. Now here's the thing, right? Here is freaking at the top, Cthulhu, death may die, fear of the unknown. It's just going up and up and up, and this is the first 24 hours. So at the end of the video, maybe I'll try and include where things are at with like 48 to the 60 hours. Now, by the time you're viewing this, there will already be half a dozen videos out telling you whether or not you should be backing this. Frankly speaking, at the time of me making this video, as well as probably the time of you viewing this video, there's not enough information to know that. This is a 2-week campaign. They have announced nothing in terms of expansions, nothing in terms of add-ons, nothing in terms of previous content. There's one pledge level right now that's there. That's it. So if you're viewing this as solely a separate product compared to the other, anyone who's put out a video, I'd say, is being a little bit premature about why you should or shouldn't back it at this point. There is a tabletop simulator. They're unlocking monetary stretch goals. They've gone with that this time. And they expect, I imagine, this to be somewhere in the 3 to 4 million, I would say, ish. Maybe a little bit more, depending on how many of those things I said, including the big guy, which please watch my video, the pre-hype video, because guaranteed I'm going to echo some of those points in a later, should you actually back this, because I shouldn't have to make one of those again because it's going to be the same, but I might anyway. Anyway, I mean, it's stretch goal after stretch goal after stretch goal. The big thing about this the first time around was the Unspeakable box. Now, I like the fact that they're actually giving you some of the new stuff, the rules, plug and play enemies, the unknown relics, and they're giving that to you in the first and second seasons as well. So it's like a plug and play for those if you are a previous one, which is nice, which is freaking nice. So even if you got nothing else, $100 will get you more than anything you would ever need. And a bunch of people now I can't tell with these testimonies here if this is old stuff or new stuff. All of these are very generic, so I don't know if this is like the original or if this is actually from this. I'm assuming based on these it's all from the original, which I'm not big enough for Simon to be like, oh yeah, it was Liege Games' top game from all time, right? But there's exclusives. They've got more monsters. They've got more variability. People aren't going to like this. This is a dungeon crawl, a rush to avoid going insane and avoid dying before things escalate too much. This is not like a super campaign narrative. They already have the rule book out here that's a work in progress, so I give them a lot of kudos for having that out during the campaign. They give you a little bit of glimpse here into what is going to make this a little bit standalone-ish, separate, but also incorporated into the goodness of the first one, and these are known as the unknown rules. Basically, it gives you the conceptualization of how you can introduce any monster into any episode and the relics that are going to be more asymmetric powers into the overall game wherever you're at. Incorporating unknown monsters, unknown mythos cards, where you're just going to be drawing an extra mythos card along with the unknown relics. I'll give you a few additional setup and a few additional rules there. You can adjust the difficulty now even further with these unknowns. So this is really freaking sweet. This is really, really freaking sweet. Now, it's going to be CMON. It's going to be freaking expensive by the end of this. But as I just commented on Board Game Geek today in response to one of my other videos, the core pledge is always going to be well worth your money. Always. It's just whether or not you want to spend that much money in the first place. Now, in the base game here, the core, they give you essentially 6 different episodes that you're going to be having access to. And I would be surprised if we don't see a few more just with this base pledge before this ends up filling out. The only question is, when we go back over to the page here, is how much other stuff is going to be in here. Now, again, you had the 3 major players having some inside access there, and then it's already hitting all of these stretch goals, but you can see that they're already starting to space them out. Oh, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 40, 60, 50, 50, 60. So they're fake. Yeah, they're fake. It's just, when are they going to hit them all, and how soon are they going to be too spaced out to slow things down? And then they do another little CMON, jump out with the expansions. I'm sure within the next 24 hours of me filming this, before this video even airs, there'll be some deluxification, either like upgraded components from like a plastic chip side of things, or a location standpoint, which is what they're known for, throwing them in, or maybe some special dice. And then we'll see an expansion probably before the weekend is out. So that's what you need to know. Again, I commented on this Twitter earlier today that if shipping is your make it or break it, you pass. Shipping's going to be whatever it is for CMON. Say what you will. You're still making money if you bought the core pledge and sold it. Not that I recommend that in the first place. But there's nothing else on the page yet, which is why you can't really make a good informed decision if you're really looking at this as, what should I get? Why should I get this? Some of those questions can be answered by the little bit of the rule book, but a lot of them are going to see, okay, where does this end up? What does this end up looking like as a whole? Which is nice to know when you're going into this and trying to make a decision, not just trying to be reactionary off the top of, it launching. So take that for what you will. I'll put that out there because it's important. Anyway, there you go. Cthulhu, Death May Die. I could rant on this for another 5 or 10 minutes, but I'm saving you guys some time today. That's a separate video. Let's do this. Next one. Bing, bing. Here's the update, right? Unspeakable box, $120. That'll save you about 2/3 of the price on the secondary market right now, if you can wait that long. But then again, you're already looking at $220 if you're going to get the other stuff, because even if you don't get the original core, you don't have the original core, you're still looking at $220 for that. And that's still a really, really good freaking deal, if you ask me, with all of the stuff that the Unspeakable brings you. Now, however, they're offering this guy again, which puts you up to $400. Now, he's green this time, but he's going to be importable with the Unspeakable stuff that we already talked about. But as I said in the other video, please go watch the other video, but I'm going to reiterate it here. I'm going to reiterate it in another video by the time this campaign ends. Don't buy this. Do not buy this. One scenario, ugly, massive green thing sitting on the floor collecting dust that nobody is gonna see. Anyway, that is what's out though, and that's 24 hours after the campaign launched. There were rumors that were confirmed out of Essen. Here we go. They are officially confirmed. Everything that goes along with that. We're gonna see what else though gets added on this weekend from that standpoint. Believe it or not, next up we're actually gonna go straight over to GameFound here, because GameFound has 3 of the games I am most excited about. This is a smattering across the board. This is the first time that I've really felt like there is more evenness between the crowdfunding sites. But first up, we're going to talk about 20 Strong. 20 Strong is making waves from Chip Theory. And this is going to be, for me, I'm telling you guys right now, I'm backing this. Straight up at the beginning, right? I love the potential of this game. I love the idea of this game. The practicality of it is going to be the biggest test of the market, because if you know me, I am not primarily a solo gamer, and that's what 20 Strong is here. Almost $200,000 here just in the first 24 hours, which is incredible. The biggest thing I'm going to say about this campaign that I'm slightly irritated about, as I say with all campaigns, no rulebook. No rulebook. There's a video from Chip Theory saying, here's what it looks like. Game overview, conceptualization of it, but nothing more explicit. That drives me crazy when campaigns do this. I'm not sure if it's because they want to hold it close to the vest, if they don't actually have it ready, or what. I mean, they have to have some sort of outline. Give me something. The other thing is, with Chip Theory games, with all of their campaigns, they are a better value on crowdfunding. This is going to be exceptionally a better value because they're offering free shipping across the board. $65 for these 3 decks, and the decks are not going to be $21.75 or so at retail, especially not including shipping. So this is a great, fantastic deal. But the real question is it for you? And the allure of it is the rumblings on Chip Theory's website, even before the launch a month ago, was that maybe, and this is maybe where I'm having hopium. That's a whole nother video as well. For you that do not know what hopium is, it's hope as a drug, right? Hope as a drug. Inject it right into my veins of maybe this will be multiplayer in the future. What is it though? I mean, I'm already talking way past the point. You have 3 decks that they are offering here. 2 properties of Chip Theory Games is, plus a new realm property that they're putting out there called Solar Sentinels. And the essential gist of this is 30 to 40 minutes playing with a set of 20 dice. That's where the 20 strong comes in, is you have 20 dice that you're going to be rolling and allocating to these challenges that you are going to be facing one at a time, making your way through a certain number of challenges to make it to the final boss. And you can only use a certain number of your dice as you allocate them, and they potentially stay with those challenges for a portion or even the whole rest of the game until you can even maybe get them back after they potentially even become exhausted. And so how you choose to do that, the numbers in which you roll, how you mitigate things, the powers, the rewards that you get for beating those challenges in the first place, or the damage that you take for failing them, is the dynamic of this game in a nutshell. Too Many Bones, Hoplomachus, and Solar Sentinels. Those are the 3 that they're starting with. The reason that it's also appealing is, as we go down here, we skip past all this fun stuff, we get to this 2023 for exciting decks, universes to explore. And that's going to be the question, is how much of this goes retail, because there were rumblings, I think, on the website about a lot of it going to retail in the future versus crowdfunding. So is it just like crowdfunding to get it like a shot in the arm to get it going? Like to get it injected into your veins, to use that analogy again, right? To kickstart it. Original use of that. That's what I look like this as. If you were one of those 10 people that got the strategist pledge, you can brag to me in the comment section down below. I completely forgot it was launching when it was launching, and so one of these days maybe I'll try for it, but I don't know. Anyway, that's all it is. That's all we know. The base of Solar Sentinels alone is going to cost you 30. So if you're going to go in for a goose, you're going to go in for the whole gander. You're going to get it all. If you don't, it's stupid. I'm being really, really upfront this week. That's all you need to know. And I think they say, though, that their other product lines are not going to be available in this pledge manager, unlike a lot of their other pledge managers. So take that for what you will. They're doing some little unlocks here, whatever. That's not going to be the make it or break it, but they've got a whole bunch unlocked here, and they're really killing it. I don't think they really expected this to be at $200,000 in 24 hours either, but there you go. That's Chip Theory. Next up, we're talking Destinies Witchwood, the expansion and the reprint from Lucky Duck. $250,000. Again, this is a really, really well-known, really well-thought-of property. Now, I prefer slightly more of the cooperative element, but this is an app-based system with dice rolling, skill check-based narrative as you're collecting pieces to slowly unlock the story, to progress, to upgrade, and to eventually find out the ending to finish before your opponents. That's what this is. Do you like this concept? Do you like this gameplay? It's solid. It's very solid. The issue I have with it is, like some other scenario-based games, is how much replayability is it once you know how the scenario unfolds somewhat. Now, with Destinies, obviously, they say with each character, you have 2 different ways their destiny can go, and so you can explore the other destiny, but why would you explore the second destiny the second time around? Because the whole objective most of the time is to win, right? And so if you're trying to win, go with the one that you've already known. And so I'm not a person that always re-watches movies that I've seen or reads books that I know the ending to, right? That's my issue with this. Now, the questionable thing that I didn't realize with this prior to launch is that you need the base game. This is not a standalone expansion, blessing or curse that is. So you need previous stuff. New scenario here for free with this exclusive content. I mean, the bundle is a relatively good deal with Lucky Duck. Again, it's been a better deal than in the past, but they've had some deluxeifications as well. So take it for what you will. But I know that wide availability was been through their shop and not necessarily elsewhere. So, you know, the character traits, the adversity modules, and the deluxeifications here are really potentially the things you're paying for. And how important are those to you? Because their miniatures were tiny in the original Destinies. Like, I was not a huge fan of their miniatures. I thought cubes or even standees would have been the chef's kiss of fine for me. The miniatures were almost too small that I couldn't tell one from another, even though, I've got 3 characters on the table. Like, there's no color difference. There's no markers that you put underneath, like with Simon, where you like put a little base on them. Like, there was nothing like that. So it was kind of, for me personally, not a big deal from that aspect. Now, getting everything else that they've got, the storage box, blah, 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 deluxifications, Witchwood, I mean, it's witches, right? It's Salem all in a nutshell, only with more of a fantasy-esque theme. So new characters, new NPCs, the world that remembers. And it does. I mean, it's app-based and it's a good system. There's, something to be said that a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, they said that we're going to base a lot of their games on this app system, and it has paid dividends. It's solid. So it's just whether or not, do you have the core already? Do you need to pick up the core? Are you okay with getting more of this? Because this is not bad. It's deluxe, though. Again, the common theme with a lot of these games this week, there are a lot of triple-digit games that I was not expecting them to be necessarily triple digits, this being one of them. How does that make you feel? You don't need everything. You can buy them individually, so take that for what you will as well. And that's just kind of cool. Now, I hate the fact that I'm going down this far already just to see what's in the actual game, telling me more about what's in the game and what the adversity module is, as opposed to up higher. Now, this is probably the best part, though, for people like me with this adversity module that gives it a slight asymmetry each time you play. Boons, curses, things that are going to alter how you play, which way you play, and giving some more asymmetry there with, literally asymmetric powers. So those are the 2 things that are probably elements, if you are a big Destinies person, I would say you would not want to play ever without. Because it does give it more legs then, which is what you really want out of a game like this. Not that you're going to play it 17,000 times, but to be able to play the same scenario 2 or 3 different times, because your different traits and your different asymmetric powers are going to lean you one way or the other, so you can't necessarily shoehorn yourself in, like I was just saying, to the same path that you did previously. That is more intriguing. And that's something cool. There you go. A little bit of everything here. Bunch of videos. Take it for what you will. That's all you need to know. Shipping is going to be shipping. It's going to be money. That's Witchwood, though. That's Witchwood. Now, we're going to stay with GameFound still. Staying with GameFound still. And this is crazy, though. Tabriz. From the designer of Cascadia. Hear me out. That right there should ring a couple bells for you. This game, worker placement, area movement, resource management. I am not usually a big worker placement, but this one really has had my eye for quite some time. And for those elements to make it to almost $100,000 so far is really incredible, especially when we start talking about the price point down here. $60 for the Premier Edition and Deluxeification discount bundle for $85. So again, that's higher up, but you're getting metal coins and a Dice Tower punch board. The real question is just, is this going to be worth it? But let's go back up here for a second. This is the other stuff that you're getting, right? The playmat, which is awesome. Games that do playmats, I'm willing to pay a little bit of an extra premium. I'm looking at Cosmic Frog. I'm looking at Flick of Faith over there, where a nice smooth playmat is one of those few deluxeifications. Like, I wish Battle for Paternia behind me had a playmat. That is a game that needs a playmat, essentially. Catacombs, the 3rd edition, playmat edition, so much freaking better than the cardboard. So I understand, and I am willing to play a little bit more for that. But the question is, are you? This is sort of a combination of things that are just really cool looking. And look, they've got meeples instead of miniatures, right? The concept is relatively straightforward. You're moving your workers, 3 of them, through the bazaar on a turn-by-turn basis, 1 at a time, up to 3 action spaces away from where they are. And they're going to be doing things like gathering resources, gathering commissions, paying for commissions, but then also laying down to represent that their turn is over. And so you're going to be doing that in a certain number of rounds to get the most complete commissions that you can, or the most essential, like, fame victory points. I think it's like 14 victory points or 8 commissions completed. And so it's really a worker placement movement around, not just pick up and put down like you may be more familiar with a lot of other worker placements. And that Prestige, that's the victory point thing I was talking about. That's the element of things that you need to know. And then you start pulling up the other elements of this game on the rule book here for a second. You have things like the marketplace, where you've got the commissions, or you're visiting the bank, which is going to get you money to buy stuff, but you also can potentially get a commission. But you're going to have the other places, the traders, the alley tiles, the courtyard tiles, the advanced workshop modes, as well as a solo mode that are going to give different elements of where you're going, what is going to be happening, including, if you saw me scroll quickly over this, dice that are going to be rolled that you're going to be paying for, that are going to roll you resources that you may not be able to get otherwise elsewhere. That's kind of cool. It's a different element of things. It's one of those that I look at and I go, I think the sum of these parts looks immensely greater than the individual elements of it right now. I'm supposed to be getting a prototype copy here in the next week or so, and so I'm really intrigued to see what this does for me hands-on comparatively. So that's what you need to be aware of, and that's essentially what it is in a nutshell. Now, there are going to be stock shortages, restocks that you're going to be dealing with. There's going to be, again, upgrades, rewards, additional options given to you in certain other phases based on the commissions you've completed. So it has a little bit of the engine build feel as well. And that's why I think it's a very intriguing game. The only question is, I was expecting this to be like in the more $40 to $45 to $50 range, not necessarily the $60 range. So you're adding a shipping then in here. That's the only other question is, and this is not like down, down, down here, right? The regions are here. Don't be confused like I was at first, but you're adding another $20 in. So this is all of a sudden an $80 game for the Premier Edition right there, which is going to have some stretch goals, going to have some promos here, going to have some punch boards if you were following early. But this is a game I look for potentially $40 to $45 at retail, and that's an expensive upgrade price to pay. Like I said, the theme of the week is essentially that you've seen now with 2 of these 3 games on GameFound already. Let's go back over to Kickstarter though. Let's go back over there for a second. Queen's Dilemma. Speaking of that theme, right? Queen's freaking Dilemma. I mean, this is the standalone expansion sequel to the King's Dilemma. The King's Dilemma, the 3 to 6 player negotiation, power building, decision making game. That's a legacy scenario based situation. Again, this game is going to be very divisive. This game is going to be very make it or break it. Frankly speaking, from Horrible Guild, I'm both a little bit surprised they have this much and also surprised they don't have more. And partially that's because of the price point. Because the base game standard alone right now is $130 freaking dollars. The deluxe edition is going to cost you $160, and that's getting you upgraded metal tokens and upgraded plastic to go along with this legacy game. Because that was the big question before the launch, is what is the incentive to get this game on crowdfunding? We saw what Jurassic World did, right? I banged them over the coals in terms of, I don't want additional plastic alternate sculpts. That's ridiculous. Is any limited legacy game worth $130 like this? That's the question you have to ask yourself. I mean, that's the question you're asking yourself probably right now with Oathsworn. If you watched my video talking about why you should not back that yesterday. How many of these games do you need? And this one in particular lends itself much different than a lot of the ones I mentioned in that video along those lines, right? Because this one, it needs to be the same group. It needs to be at least 3 people. This is not a game where you can like solo it like Oathsworn, or you can even 2-hand it with play 2 players as just 1 person. No, this is a 3-player diplomatic social legacy game. That right there, practically speaking, in terms of where I am at in my gaming life, career, situation, family, everything else, eliminates me from ever considering getting this. I would love this game. I think it'd be amazing to play. Everyone really seems to like it and enjoy it, but I'm never going to be able to play this game. 3 people, really, realistically, I would probably want 4. Consistent basis, dilemma card system of voting, of shifting your power one way or the other to make the end political climate at the end of each scenario match your own personal goal, gets you more points. It sounds really freaking sweet, right? Like, I'm a Merathrash more than Euro, and this speaks to the core of what I like in that. But to be able to do this for more than 20 hours with a core of 3 other people, that's going to be the issue. They're going to be making the Age of Disorder expansion kit with backer input here. So that's the exclusive. It's going to be free. You know, that's what Horrible Guild does. And that's sort of the dilemma that we've seen nowadays, is people are getting away from this fancy little green label, and they're labeling everything Deluxeifications wazoo. And it's the trend of the last 2 years, and it's just getting more and more and more. How do you feel about that? Personally, I'd almost rather see a little bit more green label, but that's just me, because at least then the price points also seem to be a little bit lower, inflation aside for the moment. Here's the upgrade pack talking about the metal, wooden resource tokens. King's Dilemma, you can get it here. There's all this stuff talking about how good it is. And then they talk about, okay, just a little bit of the backstory. Queen's going on, you gotta, deal with the cults in the overseas, a killer, treason, ungodly creatures, and stories that are gonna be going along with it. They don't give you anything else. You're just voting yay or nay, essentially, and having conflicting interests and trying to match the system with your political beliefs and your philosophical beliefs. You're going to be unlocking labyrinthine sets of envelopes that are going to introduce new dilemmas or even new mechanics or even new resources. And that's part of the mystery bag, though, separate from the envelopes. Twists and turns. I mean, again, if I had a consistent group of 3 people that were like, hey, dude, we will play this with you, I would be in on this in a heartbeat. I don't. I wish I did. Because again, it's not so much this, it's this. That's the issue. You pick your asymmetric character. There are 6 characters you're choosing from. Now, this is the other interesting aspect. You're going to have stickers that are going to be gaining new skills, and there's going to be different story endings for each of your character, as well as an evolving kingdom that you're going to have partial control over. So if something happens in your kingdom, you are going to be accountable, directly responsible for it if that happens. So that's a different element as well. This is more macro than the micro of King's Dilemma, if you will, to differentiate the two. So there you go. That's King's Dilemma's sequel, Queen's Dilemma. Freaking great concept. It's like Blood on the Clock Tower, though, for me, right? Like, Blood on the Clock Tower, you can play it with 5 people or so, or 3 people. Yeah, everyone recommends it, though, from anywhere from like 8 to 13, though, if you're really going to get the full experience. I think you need at least 4 or 5 to get the full experience here of the same group. And can you do that? I can't, which is why I'm not going to be backing it as much as I'd love the concept and the idea of it. So there you go. That's Queen's Dilemma. Next up, Hidden Leaders, Forgotten Legends. Check out my review of it earlier in the week as well. 2,000 people. This price point is not large. So 2,000 people. The funding goal right now and the total funds is not fully representative of that, just by the nature of some of these smaller pledges. And that's kind of freaking cool. If you liked Hidden Leaders for $18, that's how much this is. That's why it's only at $40,000, folks. $18 will get you this. And if you liked Hidden Leaders, then you should get this expansion. Because 2 of the 3 modules, I feel like, personally speaking, having played them, having hands-on experience with them, make it so I probably wouldn't play without them from that aspect. 3 modules, you have artifacts, you have guardians, you have corruption. Artifacts, asymmetric cards that you can use a certain number of times that are going to help you mitigate some of the randomness, that are going to give you a little bit more take that. So if you like take that, it's going to give you a little bit more of that ways of manipulating your cards and other people's cards. Guardians, adding a faction and a 3rd tracker on the map that you may be actually utilizing and mitigating, or no one may have that guardian token and it may be just a red herring in terms of the gameplay, which makes it a little bit more dynamic of, instead of just, one of the biggest criticisms you could make potentially of this game is that once people start playing a few cards, you can kind of tell which objective they're going for. And this adds another mystery element to it that makes it a little bit more obtuse by having these super strong guardian cards that can swing things either way, but also depending on how they're played, discarded, or buried, then you can have even more influence on the guardian token, which has a different influence on the game because you have leaders that are winners if the guardians win as well. So that's what it's offering. Now, the 3rd module is the corruptions. The corruption is potentially changing the allegiance of your characters, but also giving you a little bit of protection, a little bit more take that, as well as a little bit more just allegiance swinging back and forth. And so that's the one that could be more group variable dependent, depending on how you like to utilize that, because I could see people getting very heavy into that. I could see people not utilizing it much, and that's why it's the one I didn't feel quite as strong about. There you go. Fifth faction. I completely fourth faction. Duh. Yeah. Rulebook is there. Pledges are there. Everything is on the page that you need to know about. Social goals, everything else for the bigger goals as well. My thing is right there. I think I passed it. I'm not even, you can look at it yourself. Shipping is going to be fine. It's a solid game. It's not a whole lot of mystery of what it is, right? So play a card, manipulate, discard, draw back up, discard back down. And that's the other thing I really like about this game. This is a mechanic that I wish other games used more of, is that you discard down, draw back up, but then still get to choose which of the ones you drew you get to keep. So you're not just stuck with the random draw and the crappiness of a random draw. You're overdrawing essentially to then choose which one is still going to be best for you. And I wish other games mechanistically took that approach. So that's Hidden Leaders. That's Forgotten Legends. Check it out. Next up, Zoo Tycoon. I don't know about this one. Holy cow, people. Reading through all these rule books on a week-by-week basis, right? Like, I sort of get into rulebook overload, but this was one of the first ones I read this week. Okay, the first thing I'll say is right here. 230 animal meeples. Looks freaking amazing. Like Wild Serengeti, Life of Amazonia, and Cascadia had a baby with Arc Nova. That's what it looks like, if that's descriptive enough for you. But this card right here, this panda card, that's representative right there. There are about 17 different things on that card that you are needing to know, utilize, and potentially deal with or be aware of. And that's just one of the animals that you're going to be managing on your zoo as you're building it stall by stall, populating it, and going through the various phases, the 4 seasons of each of the 8 rounds, 8 years, because they're giving you, for some reason, 8 years to manage a zoo to figure out who can do it the best, right? Like, your job interview is going to be based on an 8-year performance scale, and after 8 years, 3 of you are going to be fired. Anyway, don't think about it too much from that aspect. It's an absolutely beautifully fantastic looking Arc Nova-esque game. But it has a ton of symbology. The rulebook is probably the densest rulebook on crowdfunding this week. I kid you not. There's not going to be a good sense of flow based on the rulebook. You're going to have to watch some of the video. There is just so much going on in a turn-by-turn basis with an action changing season by season of what you have to mitigate, what you're keeping up, when you're going to be birthing at the beginning, and the cubes that take spaces, but then they turn into meeples, but then you're going to have spaces for them later, and can you have the animals with the others, and a little bit of like a New York Zoo where you're going to be putting in, and they can only be with certain ones, but sometimes they can be with others. There's just a ton going on. And did I mention 230 animal meeples right here? So did I say that this was going to be almost a triple digit price point for the deluxeification? Yeah, it is. Now, I'm not a huge fan of silk screening here, but that's what's going to cost you, I think, essentially almost another $25 for that. So take that for what you will. Deluxe, right? It's cool. I find this little quote right here, I read through this earlier. As confirmed by hundreds of players' question, the price of this game is very fair. That is such a weird statement. To put on there. Anyway, and you know why it is, right? The basic gist of this game is you have 3 separate things that you're going to be going for. And popularity, conservation, and just sort of how overall well you've built your zoo. And the tricky part is, it's one of those games where you have popularity and conservation. And normally in a game like this, you try and maximize one, right? Well, the winning score is the one that is lower for you. So you have to, it forces you to manage both at the same time. So that's kind of what you need to know. You have an empty park that you're just going to be slowly building stalls and areas of enclosure and restaurants and all of those things that are going to be accessible. Retreats, everything else in between. They run through the whole list down here: food booths, shops, convention centers, education booth, parks to enhance, focus or on the zoo, individual enclosures, however you want to do it, it's yourself, right? The rule book here, this is a massive rule book, folks. This rule book here is 24 pages, and I wanted to highlight a few things on here to give you a better sense of exactly what I'm talking about. They run through the boards, your asymmetric areas, you're going to be making your own individual zoos on the side, and they give you the overview that I just mentioned. The lower of the two scores between conservation and popularity are compared, and whichever one is lower is the one you use, and the highest of those of everyone wins. Now, it breaks down the card legend here. The card legend, right? This card legend is split between like almost 3 pages. This right here that I'm talking about, right? Look at all these numbers. There are literally 17 different things on this card. 17 things that you're keeping track of. Almost. I mean, one of them is the name, but everything else on there is relevant that you are going to have to be aware of. That is a ton of information. Offspring rolling, litter sizing, mother tracking, popularity focus, experience, free space, retreats, its tolerance for others, its social behavior aspects, the number of animals, the cost per enclosure tile, everything all on there. That's just massive. Now, this is the one element too that they say you can do with or without. You can do the Dead of Winter-esque events that happen at the beginning of every event year round, or you can just not use them, depending on how you want to do it. Offspring is going to be in the first phase of things. Staff actions in the spring, including very situational breeding and birth control, depending on how you want to do it. And then it starts reintroducing some of the other concepts. Here's summer, where you're going to be getting a little bit more of the species in the zoo are brought in or given away, renewing the market, leaving everything, arriving new species. Autumn is most of the enclosure tiles and replacing donor cards and building new stuff. And then the last phase of, I mean, again, look at all this stuff, right? Like there's just tons of information on the minimum requirements of adding this is the requirements for putting a new species in the zoo, right? Look at this. That's a lot of stuff. Focal points, buildings, commercials, everything else there. We finally get down to winter, animal keeping, education, revenue is achieved, and then scoring at the end. So just absolutely massive. I think you need to read this rulebook. I would argue that of the ones this week, I would probably watch a video on this one the most to get this explanation, because I don't think you're going to get it well just by reading it right now. It's going to be heavier than probably most of the other stuff on crowdfunding this week. And I say that, and you also see a little bit more of that heavier side of things in terms of some of the reviewers as well, the ones that do a little more of that. So it definitely goes with that aspect of things. Like I said, the deluxeification, though, is going to cost you $100. It's going to cost you $100 before shipping, and that's not insignificant. I mean, the wooden meeples, sure, I agree with, I'm not going to argue with that quote above, like 230 wooden pieces with all the other resources as well that go along with it. But take it for what you will. How does this really differ than something Ark Nova-esque? How does this differ than those sorts of aspects? It is, but which one is going to be right for you? And that's the question you have to ask yourself, especially nowadays. So there you go. Next up, we got CoraQuest. And if you're not familiar with CoraQuest, basically it's this self-designed, self-published kids, but also sort of bridging aspect of a dungeon crawl from a guy and her daughter named Cora. So that's the gist of it, right? And it's got $47,000. It reminds me very much of Quest Kids in the audience of which it's meant for. And it's meant to be a little bit engaging, lighter than just the lightest of dungeon crawls, but not too light that you can play it with some of your kids. And so if you want the expansion, it's just going to be about $30 right now. They've got some additions to go with it to incentivize you. They're offering a free little mini expansion with a little set of extra dice and abilities. And the question just is, with this game of CoraQuest, is, well, one, what is it? How does it make it different? But then two, what is the expansion adding? Well, CoraQuest in general is, like I said, a light dungeon crawl where it's just laying down tiles, anywhere from a deck of up to 17 different tiles that you lay out as you explore the edges of the tiles that you're on. And that's going to spawn new enemies. It's going to spawn new stories. You're going to be putting 4 story tiles split between 4 sections of a deck. They're going to be shuffled up and then stacked in order so that you get a little bit of a sense of progression there. And you're going to be trying to complete some sort of objective to be able to complete the dungeon in the first place, including battling a big boss. Now, the expansion is going to be adding more abilities, more upgrades, and just more of a campaign style to give some progression instead of just being a one-off from that sense. So that's really what it's adding here. The price point, again, is very, very respectable, $30 for that. If you want the base game as well, it's only going to cost you $63. What else are you going to get with it, though? And that's what you need to know with this. This is the sort of thing, right? You're learning, you're upgrading, and you can have unlimited upgrades. I mean, this is supposed to be kid-friendly. It's move, attack, roll dice. If you get an attack action, you hit. You hit, you do 1 damage. More hits, more damage. Enemy attacks back on their phase. Rinse and repeat. It's simple, it's straightforward. But if you miss, you get determined, which means you get to roll extra dice the next time around. You got your adventure map. You've got everything else you need to see here. Here's the little add-on expansion that I was talking about. The Black Dice mini expansion, 5 level up cards to beef you up, and 2 powerful attack dice with new treasure cards as well. The rulebook is really, really easy to read. They're doing timed reveals that are just basically cool things that they want to add in there additionally, at least for backers, maybe for retail as well. I don't really know from that aspect, but just more and more and more little stuff. So that's it. That's what you need to know about this game. Everything is straightforward on here, right? It goes through a little bit of what I just said. The rulebook is on here as well, and they've got little quests that you can do in addition with this. So very straightforward, very well thought of for this tweener sort of not toddler, but not quite ready for your full dungeon crawls style of audience. So that's CoraQuest. Again, $49,000 with that $30 price point for an expansion, just like Hidden Leaders. It's freaking killing it. So there you go. Next up, all of a sudden, this is much sooner than I expected. We have Wander, LaCluck's Revenge. Wander, the Barnacle Bay dungeon crawl game sequel, the standalone expansion to it. This is already raised $50,000. Now, I wondered if it's going to plateau again. I mean, it's doing well. It's doing, I think, even maybe slightly better than the first time around, but this is really a relatively quick relaunch. And skimming through the page right here, I'm not necessarily as impressed as I wanted to be. Now, there is more content with this new stuff than there was the first time around. There's more explanation on the page, and there's even more explanation on the page at the top, which is what I love. At the same time, why? Why am I getting this? What is making this one better? Branching scenario, challenge-based dungeon crawls with a little bit more of a lighter thematic aspect. Fighting off ghosts over water as pirates. That's what you're doing. Bunch of miniatures, a bunch of renders here. You're fighting off ghosts like I mentioned. It goes right into the new mechanics of where you're fighting the ghosts that are spooky. And if you do damage, you get courage. If they damage you, you lose courage. But this is another thing I'd like to see potentially in other games, at least, if nothing else. When you get hit by these and lose courage, it changes the initiative order, which is kind of freaking cool. But the other aspects that you need to know about it as well, they run through a couple miniatures here. Cannons, adding new attack ways where you can blow up objective walls, opening new passages, but you can also set things on fire, and stuff gets on fire, and then it wounds all heroes, and if you don't put it out, it's going to spread. So the thematic incorporation, dark water is basically poison, and if you go in there, you're going to get health damage dealt to you, and you're going to have rafts that you can traverse it in that sense. Those are the new aspects. That's where goodness kind of stops. Like, they've got a couple videos here. If we scroll down a bit further, a few quotes on the new stuff, but that's about it. I think 2 or 3 of these videos are paid, and there's a rules video as well, so all the other stuff is old. It just makes it hard. It makes it hard to judge this. Like, are the mechanics smoothed out? Is it going to make sense? Why do I get this dungeon crawl as opposed to a different dungeon crawl? Right? What mechanics make it unique as a dungeon crawl? And none of that is on the page. None of it is still on the page. Again, the price point is not insignificant. It's $100 here above my head for just the standalone expansion. And it's $200 if you want to get the previous as well. So you get a little bit of a deal, 110, or 200 total. I don't know. Because if you're someone who's new to this altogether, right? And you just see this, if you've never heard of this game before, and you are a dungeon crawl fan, like, why am I getting this game as opposed to dungeon crawls elsewise? That's what it doesn't have. It doesn't describe the actual mechanical nature of things. It gives me overview of some of the mechanics in general speak, but there's also no rule book. I don't want to always watch a video. I love watching videos. I don't want to always watch a video though. I'm a visual learner, not auditory in that sense. So I'd like to see more from that aspect. And the question now is just, is it going to outdo the previous launch, or was this still a little bit too soon to come back right back without more stuff? We'll see where it goes. Wander, LaCluck's Revenge. Tesseract, cooperative dice manipulation. So you have this 4x4x4 dice cube with strange alien symbols. Well, they're just really 1 through 6s with special symbols in place of them. And you are manipulating that cube with 3 actions to try and isolate as many of them as you need to create runs of 1 through 6 of all the different colors. And you're going to be taking 3 actions per turn in order to do that. 60 minutes, 1 to 4 player cooperative dice manipulation game, right? Does that scream Liege to anybody else? That screams Liege to me, right? It runs you through the various actions you're going to be taking here, because you're either going to win or lose, like I mentioned, in 2 different ways. You're going to have either isolated 1 through 6 of all of the different colors, and there are 4 colors, so a total of 24 cubes, or you are going to lose if all of the cubes are out of the Tesseract, or 7 breaches. You know, it's sort of like a pandemic outbreak, if you will, in a sense. And so you're going to be taking these different actions, including removing a cube and placing it into your lab, adjusting the value of the die as a whole, transferring it to somebody else's lab, containing it into this matrix to create then runs, which are going to then be able to take one of those dice from those runs and utilize it for your end game condition. You're going to have asymmetric abilities, just like Pandemic, and you're going to have priming at the end here, the enemy phase, the threat phase, if you will, where 1 cube is automatically removed. The other aspect of this is that you're going to be having researcher cards that you can play that are going to help you manipulate further and better. Now, the issue is that if you're going to be playing solo, this may be not your solo game because you're going to be playing two-handed from that aspect. Like I said, runs you through how to win right there. $50 for the pledge level. Like a significant upgrade for the metal dice. Yeah, let's see. 130 for the metal dice. I mean, that's a lot of metal dice, but that's $80, right? Whew. 81 people, though, going for it. So take that for what you will. And it just seems kind of cool. It just seems like a nice mix of pandemic loop fun goodness. And is this going to be the best price point? Is this going to have wide availability? I don't really know, but I'm really intrigued by this one. I'm going to be backing this and watching this one until the end. And so we'll see. I wasn't kidding about this being sort of the sleeper hit week, if you will. Now, I mentioned, how you're going to be losing in the pandemic outbreak-esque breach. Well, that's if you have, you take one of those dice off and you allocate them to the primed area. And the primed area is essentially like where they go if you're not controlling them. And if you have, let me see if I can find it up here. I probably won't be able to find it. Here you go. If you have 3 or more in an area like that on the example, then that's considered a breach. So you have that happen 7 times and you lose. You can't be pulling off the same ones all the time in that sense. The other thing you need to know is this first action right here, the remove, you can only remove a die that has 3 faces potentially open. So that's the other cool aspect, right? It's no Jenga in terms of, I'm just going to take one out here, right? No, you're not, sir. And so that's why I'm really intrigued by this game. I really think this is a cool concept, and I really want to see it succeed and do well. And so I just hope it's as cool as I think it is. So there's Tesseract. Cooperative dice manipulation. That's just a cool combination of words right there. Check it out. Next up, Aerodome, Rising Horizons. This is season 1. Now, this is a very interesting competitive tactical game from one of the designers from FFG, I think, that he actually worked on X-Wing. And you'll know a little bit of that influence, and you'll see it right away. $32,000, 266 people, because to get in at this point, the core is, relatively easy, right? $35, and it gets you a little bit of early bird there. 2 cores is that, but really what a lot of people are getting is the deluxe here for $100 or even $190 if you want a more of a deck build. So that's the other thing that you kind of have to be aware of. Now, what you're doing here is you've got 4 different classes of fighters that you're essentially dogfighting with, if you will. And this is more of an X-Wing-esque skirmish game with a little bit of measurement. The difference being that at the beginning of the game, prior to playing, you're going to build a deck, so-and-so, a deck, quote-unquote, if you will, of 9 different maneuver cards. And each of those cards needs to be different in the sense that all cards are going to have initiative values, 1 through 9. And so you have to have 9 different initiative cards. And so that's going to limit how you can pick and choose in terms of how you're going to build it, right? You can't have just a bunch of initiatives of like 8, so you always go first. And so you're going to be playing down simultaneously one card and then flipping it over. The higher initiative goes first. And you roll a d6 or something if you tie. So take that for what you will. But essentially, the customization of the maneuvers here is of over 180 cards that you're going to be utilizing. And then the action phase, it has this diagram of actions along the bottom side of the card that you have to go through in order. But you don't necessarily need to do them all. If it's got a lock next to it, you have to do it. If it's black, you may do it. And so there are different ways of how you're going to be able to do things in that. But it's like barrel rolls, turning, moving straight, attacking. Just they run through all of the actions right here. Rotating, turning, implements, all of those things. And so then you return the card to your hand. And then you rinse and repeat. Now, there are also status effects, dazed, frozen, all sorts of stuff like that. The first one to do 15 damage to your opponent's plane wins. Rulebook is there. Basically, everything that I just said with a little bit more nuance of some of what the card explanation is. Here's the 2 tier levels that I already mentioned as well. You have the unique box sleeve, the exclusive mat, metallic stamped fighters, markers, and tools that are going to be in the deluxe tier as opposed to the core set as well. So here's all the stuff that goes along with it. The champions tier is going to give you even more of those deluxeifications and everything else to go along with it in terms of stretch goals. So a little bit of expansions, and those are actually going to be a lot unlocked and included in the core set as well. So that's kind of cool. Although the first one isn't, it looks like. So early bird promo if you're in the first 48 hours, which you guys are outside of at this point. And that's it in a nutshell. Definitely not for me. I'm not a very good spatial element. Like if I was playing one of these games, like I have Star Wars Armada that I haven't really played a whole lot. Like it would be me and my opponent constantly missing each other. That would be my experience with a game like this. So that's why I never got into X-Wing, but this is a cool, slightly different spin variation on it. And that's Aerodome. Check it out. Next up, we have Funbrick Series from Itten. You may not recognize Itten's name, but you may recognize a few of their games. Tokyo Highway, Crash Octopus, and the much lesser known but very well thought of abstract game called Moonbase. Next is a set of 5 games that they're calling the Funbrick Series, which are just kind of compact little, I don't know, light party games, if you will, in a sense. And it runs through just very quickly. All 5 of them, Viking Seesaw. You're just putting different pieces of different sized elements on each side, watching it go back and forth. And there's all sorts of different types of things. Wood, aluminum, metal, glass, acrylic, they say. And it's seesaw strategy. Next up is Ninja Master, where you're rolling 9 dice and gathering swords and ninja stars and being the first one that can do whatever it's requiring you to do. Third one is 3 Second Try, where you've got a whole bunch of just random like things. Like the one on the page here, the example is, how many movie titles can you name in 3 seconds? And because that's essentially what you have until this ball rolls down to the bottom. When the ball rolls down to the bottom, if you've done it, great, you get a point. If you haven't, well, you don't. And there's going to be brain as well as physical ones that you're going to have to do in that time span. The next one up here is stick collection, where you want to see how many sticks you can imagine that are going to be a certain size, but you can't get too close to figure it out. So you have to kind of guess. And if you can guess the most appropriately from a largest distance, you're just better than your opponents. Last one up here is Judge Domino, where you're putting down a line of dominoes and guessing whether or not they're going to actually succeed or fail. But you have to make other people think that Topling's not going to succeed. So how well can you bluff putting down dominoes of different sizes in order to make other people think it's going to happen, but you make it actually happen? That's it. Now it's going to be expensive. 3 games alone is going to get $48, and all 5 is going to cost you $76 before shipping. So take that for what you will. But yeah, you won't be able to get them widely available. I mean, we're just seeing Crash Octopus, the most recent one from Itten prior to this, get limited retail availability over here in North America. And that's just because people have really found it very charming and very fun to play in general. Tokyo Highway, the same thing. Moonbase, not really. And so it's a little bit of a grab bag with these Japanese ones all the time. And most of the time the answer is no. But it's a little bit of something different, a little bit of something lighter, a little bit of something more whimsical. That's Funbrick Series. Next up is Cosmoctopus. You don't know how many times I said that before I actually kept this take, right? This is 1 to 4 players, $33,000, solo, versus, and co-op all at the same time. And it's from the creator of Parks. So if you like that pedigree, well, let's talk a little bit. Now, you're too late for this to get the plushie for free, but you can add it on for 10 euros or 10 pounds or whatever it is right there if you really want to. The gist of this game is that you have this cosmic octopus sitting in the center of the tiles. And in the beginning game, they recommend starting with a 3x3 grid. And so in this game, you're going to be slowly moving him from one space to the next orthogonally. And as he goes to different spaces, there are going to be different resources, different rewards, and different things that you're going to acquire based on what position he's in. And so with subsequent games, you can change the layout and how many tiles of what you want to do to give it a different dynamic. But as you go, you're going to be resource gathering a combination of 4 different cards, but 4 different resources that correspond to them to slowly engine build. And each of these 4 different cards are going to have different characteristics. And just pulling it up here so I don't forget, like I said, permanent upgrades with the scriptures, relics are permanent upgrades with ongoing effects related to resources, hallucinations are the one-time powerful effects, and constellations are getting you tentacles. Now, why do I want tentacles? Because the first person to get 8 tentacles is the winner. And now this gets you a one-off time effect as well. And so that's what you're going to be managing. The tricky part is you're going to be gathering all these resources and gathering all these cards through these actions and swirling them all together, but you can only keep 8 of each at the end of each turn. So you're going to have to be very careful about how you're wanting to do that. But if you get to 13, you actually get an extra bonus of forbidden knowledge, and you get 2 tentacles, and there you go, helping you that way. And so that's what you're going to be trying to do. First contact is an additional way to get a little bit of a bonus. And then, like I said, the game ends when somebody has 8 tentacles to summon the cosmic octopus to the realm in the first place. That's it. A little bit of an asymmetry, a little bit of a, I'm assuming maybe a little take that. I can't really tell based on the rulebook how much of those cards are going to be like interactive, but I would assume there has to be a little bit of that sense. And the price point is relatively good comparatively to all the other stuff this week. So take that for what you will. Has a print and play as well. $45. So, and if you're in the early bird round here, you got $45 getting your free plushie too. That's kind of cool. I could use a free Cosmic Octopus plushie. You know, it's probably not as good as a Cosmic Hyperspace Kraken, but it's probably second to maybe just that. Private Investigator is the AI character that you can convert it to either a solo game if you're going to be that type, or competitive into cooperative. And they say it only adds 20 seconds per round in terms of upkeep from that aspect, and 4 different difficulties that you can play against. That's everything you need to know. Hitting some stretch goals here already, which are mostly non-gameplay, so take that for what you will as well. Some social goals below it. That's Cosmoctopus. I'm messing that up every time, but let me tell you, I try hard. Next up from Japanime. Japanime is bringing us another edition of Tanto Cuore. This one's Memento Mori, Twilight Manor. This is a deck building game with maids, and I think the theme is awful. I'll say that. This theme has absolutely no appeal. I think it's a little bit bleh, just even anyway. This has a lot more money than the last couple Japanime games, I would say even in the last year, as a total on crowdfunding. So there's a lot of people that really like this for what you will. New arts, worker ghosts, $50 for the price point. It's a deck building game for 2 to 4 players. You have this main first maid that you play, has sort of a power that sets things the tone for everybody. And then after that, you have sort of the different phases of where, you know, you're usually deck building, right? You're playing your cards, you're buying new maids, you're ending, wrapping up in that sense. If you go over to the rulebook here, which is on there, it kind of gives you a highlight of that. Again, high class maid uses the ability. You play cards, you gained errand cards, you buy new cards, return, clean up, rinse, and repeat. And so you get a little bit of how you're going to be doing that. If you look at the board here as well, they have a little bit of different columns and maid decks that you're going to be playing from. You have 10 different maid decks that you're going to be trying to go through, as well as cleaning, decorations, and food that you're going to be buying to get more points as well. And the game ends when somebody has gone through 2 of these maid decks. Now, one of the new aspects here, if we go back over to the page, it's going to be exploring and renovating the manor in the different room cards that you're going to be traversing. They give you a playmat, They give you a little bit of everything else you need to know. They give you a little of the basics. They talk about how to incorporate it with the base game and the previous iterations on the rulebook. So take that for what you will. I haven't seen if there's any exclusives down here. You can get some of the old stuff there as well. Foil pack, sleeves, shipping was going to be what it is. I don't see any stretch goals there. So let's go to the FAQ real quick. I want to see. Let's see. Can I join in post-campaign? $1 for the pledge manager, and I don't see anything else there. So foil pack. So take that for what you will. That is Tanto, Cuore from Japanime and Arclight Studios. Next up, we're going to be talking about Survival of the Fattest. This is a little bit of a different resource management style game. And I think the title needs some work. I would not title a game like that ever because it doesn't really do what I would think it would do for a game. Like, right? Like, it just doesn't give me the vibe of this is a resource management game of where you're trying to gather the most resources as one of the 6 creatures in the forest that's trying to do so in a little bit of a Euro style mechanism. Because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing over 3 seasons. And in these 3 seasons, they're each going to have 4 rounds. Each round is going to have 4 phases: turn order, actions, foraging, cleanup. And so those are going to be very specific because the actions are going to be playing said cards. In the beginning, it's going to be determining initiative order by playing these forage cards that are going to be used later on in the 3rd phase. The foraging cards are how you get food. The highest number in the corner for those is going to allow you to go first. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing cards. And you have several different ways of doing that, including your starting hand and including buying other recipes or cards later on down the line. And so they look at this, you take your action, and this is the other thing I like that I just talked about with another game that utilizes the same mechanism, Hidden Leaders, recycling unwanted cards. Now the trick with this is you discard down by as many cards as you want, but you draw 1 less than the number of you discard. So that's kind of cool. Then you play cards, tricks as they're called in this sense, and you resolve them. They're going to have different abilities, they're going to have different effects. Then you have to go and visit a different location, and locations are going to have things like recipes. They're going to have, your stash where you can store food that you've acquired, and then you forage. Foraging is important because it's going to be slightly different than the initiative round at the beginning, which the person who goes first is just decided by whoever's the highest number on the card. This is decided by whoever has the most cards getting the first pick. And so then you forage and you get stuck with even food or even traps, and you can complete recipes to get victory points and bonuses as you go along. And you're going to have to be able to feed them as you go, otherwise you're going to lose as well. So a little bit of a rule book there. Looks like we also have a deluxeification here. If you were surprised, I wasn't kidding. $44 is the standard edition. Still, the early bird here, 35 left, but that's a standard. So I'm guessing all the deluxe early birds are taken, and they are. And how much difference was that, by the way? $61 compared to $64. That's nothing. $3. Who cares? Standees instead of miniatures. And that's what looks like one of the bigger things is. Although it looks like you've got mini expansions here with the deluxe, and you do not have... That's more than just a deluxe. That's a content as well. And then that's why, I guess, looking at the side there first makes more sense. But it's only about 33% funded right now, a little over that. So we'll kind of see. These are very ambitious stretch goals for a game that hasn't funded. And so we'll kind of see where that goes. But we just saw with Philosophy from Quality Beast Games, it funded within the last 30 hours or so of the game actually campaign ending over on GameFound, I mean. So it looks like a resource management game with trick taking, but not really trick taking, just card playing. So I guess the reason I'm not seeing on here to back it is how different is this? You call it tricks, I like the recycling, the visiting locations, like sort of like a worker placement-esque vibe. So I just don't see the why get it now factor for me right now, but we'll see where it goes over the next 4 weeks or so. So that is Survival of the Fattest. Next up, we have Spies. Spies is a hidden movement deduction game for 2 to 6 players. You may not have heard of this because it's small, right? It's a print and play for $4 freaking dollars. But look at that. They have almost 1,000 people. That's freaking amazing. It's in the lines of like Aquamarine and Voyage and those ones that we've seen over the past couple months as well. And it looks kind of cool. 2 to 6 players, total of 8 rounds. You are moving, missioning, and then cluing. Meaning you have to like clue people to where you go. Moving, you have to go at least 1 room adjacent, but you can go up to 2 rooms. But once you go through or into a room, you can never go back to that room ever again. But you can get extracted, and you can get extracted to anywhere else on the map. But if you extract as your movement, you have to announce to everyone else at the table where you are getting extracted from. So therein lies the dilemma. To get away, you may need to extract. But if you're going to extract, you're going to tell everyone else where you just were, and maybe where you were just before that as well. You have a target, and this goes into the mission phase of things, where you're either going to be trying to track them or you're trying to sabotage them. And so if the target that you're going after completes a mission and you circle a room, you go into a room and you complete a mission. If you complete a mission, you get like points. But if someone else sabotages in the same room, your person who's chasing you sabotages in the same room that you complete a mission, that's a detriment instead. Now, I didn't mention this, but the target for you, if you're playing with multiple people, right? The question is how you're going to play this, right? Is that the target is the person on your left. And so what you're going to be doing is on that clue phase, you're going to just ask them a question. And then they have to respond truthfully. At the end of the game, what you're going to be doing at the end of the game is you're going to be looking at them and saying, hey, are you in this room? And if you're right, you get like 6 points. If they're in the room adjacent, you get like 3 points. But if you're wrong, you get 0 points. And then you add up, okay, how many completed missions do I have of the circled rooms? How many times did I sabotage someone else? You get another point. And then you add it up until the end and someone gets the win based on that, right? And it's an out loud question that you're asking in that clue phase that I did not like be specific about that, right? And you have to use clues as hints to find out where they're targeting. And so you're just going to be sort of keeping track. And this looks, I just sort of talked myself into this one, to be very frank with you. I'm a big fan of Aquamarine. I'm a big fan of Voyages. I just did Sunshine City as well. This is $4 and I don't even know who's doing this. No Box Games. No Box Games, you're getting a big shout out of the Sleeper of the Week for me on this one as well, because this just seems kind of cool. So there you go. Spies. I was not expecting to like this. I was not expecting to cover this, but here we are making a sleeper pick of the week, and you should check it out too if you're interested. Let's blow these guys up. Let's do it. Next up, what we got going on? Let's go over. We're finally going to get to Aegean Sea from Asmati Games over here on Back Our Kit. Karl Chudek, his latest game. You may know him from like Innovation, right? And Motenai. And this is where you are building an island with abilities of basically putting these cards on all different sides of the island to represent ships, populace, temples, and goods to enrich your home island as you go along. Now, the interesting thing is, I didn't realize this until I did a little bit of a deeper dive on the Board Game Geek forums, is that this is actually like a print and play that they produced back in like 2019. And so there's actually reviews of like the 100 copies or so that they did in 2019 on Board Game Geek, which kind of gives it a little bit of a mixed feeling, if you will. They thought it was a little bit too complex, a little bit too random for the sake of it. And so the question is, what have they learned in the last like 2.5 years since they did it originally? There was an AMA on Reddit, and then, it was asked, okay, what's new? What's different? And so there were some changes. There were some things that they've made in that sense. Now, what you're going to be doing in this is you're going to be having one of these 5 nations that you're going to be trying to score points with on your home island by amassing goods, and then, having people with customs and just using your tools that are to your advantage. Now, it says 20 minutes per player, and I worry about a game like this that could go a lot longer than that, especially with something like AP, when you're trying to decide, when you have these cards, what side of the island you're going to put them on to order to maximize what they can do, sort of a min-maxing game, if you will. That's what it really reminds me of. And so you're going to have potentially like 5 different options of how you're going to put a card down every single time, and that's going to be a little overwhelming for some people. The rulebook is relatively straightforward. It lays it out rather nicely as well. So basically what you've got here is you've got one of your 5 different asymmetric factions, if you will, nations. And they all have different customs, which is your asymmetric ability. And what you're going to be trying to do is you're going to be trying to create goods in order to get them from the inner islands to your home controlled island as you go. But you're going to be scoring points that way. However, it's not just going to be as simple and straightforward as that, because the gameplay is going to be around the basic actions that you are doing at these islands. It's not you're only playing on your island like I originally suspected and thought prior to the campaign launch, right? You're playing on all of these other islands trying to maximize it. And so what that does is it means that your island is controlled by the player with the most populace there. So not only are you going to be trying to upgrade what that island can do, but you're also going to be trying to control it. But if it doesn't do anything, then controlling it is less than worthwhile, right? And you have to have the ships as well in order to do that. So that's how that's going to be a little bit more of a difference. So they talk about it here, the basic actions, which are going to be on the islands themselves. And then they run you through, okay, you can do a home ship, you can gain more population on your home island, on a quest, or just refresh your hand. If you have less than 4 cards in your hand, you have to take this. But if your deck's empty, the game ends. Now, the other thing that you have to be aware of is you can't put too many of these cards on an island. So there's going to be what they call vainglory here. So if you have 11 plus the number of players, more cards. So if they say there's 2 players in this game, if you have more than 13 cards on any one island, you lose all of the cards, because as the rulebook says, the gods do not tolerate such wanton excesses. Anyway, but that's sort of what you've got going on here. They talk about control of the island. The player with the most population at an island controls it. And then, you know, how you're going to be sort of utilizing the actions and the terminology here. But that's about it. That's about it. So you score your points based on the goods that I mentioned. I don't know. I'm going to be watching these videos after I finish this video to kind of see what this is, because I really feel like this is a game I should like, but I'm not really sure about it from that standpoint right now. I'd like a little bit more of an example on here, and there's not really anything else besides that. I mean, it's bare bones at best, which is okay, but also it just sort of screams to me like backer kit in general has been a little bit subpar on these pages in terms of what has been put out and product-wise. Maybe not Return to Dark Tower, but I dare say Spirit Island, and now with Aegean Sea. Just show me a little bit more, right? Show me some mechanics. Show me how those interactions happen. Give me a turn or player 2 example, just as a GIF on the board to show people why they're getting it. So there you go. There's Aegean Sea. Next up, we have Hexx, the word game you'll flip over. No, look at that pun. That's so punny. Basically, it's Scrabble. It's Scrabble with different colored words, different colored letters. And so all you have to do is you make words out of the letters that you have, right? But if you use somebody else's letter, you flip it over to their color. You want to have the most colored letters at the end. The difference between this and Scrabble is that the words that are adjacent don't also have to be words. I mean, if they are, great, but they don't have to have that where everything you touch has to be a word. And that's the big difference, which you may or may not like because of, well, how you feel about Scrabble in that sense. And you get a hex tile as well, and you have to see what's going to happen with that when you play it. So they have a little bit of what those are right there, and you have to roll to see which hex will affect them or their opponent. So some take that in your Scrabble, right? Right? Okay, they give you an example there of the GIF. The hex panel right here, playing the hex tile, they have to roll it. In case they roll a full, reversal of fortune, the primary word they just played changes to the opponent's color. That would not make me feel good about that sort of thing. It's a cool looking board though. I'm gonna guess it's a fair amount of money. Yeah, $56. That's not too bad. Ships in December. Yeah, that's not too bad. Oh, Sum 8. Oh, I remember these guys. I did Sum 8. I think I get a discount if I back Sum 8 and you want to get Hexx here. I think I get a discount on it. Or if you don't have your copy of Sum 8, they'll like ship them both together for like free shipping. So this is Turn Up Games. Sum 8. Let me tell you, I haven't had a review of it yet. It's actually sitting right up above here. I'm not sure you can see it. It's probably slightly out of camera shot. Maybe when I go back to the full screen at the end of the video, you'll see it. It has the most deluxeified wooden box I've ever seen. So it was definitely costly. It definitely was worth it in terms of production. Gameplay, I can't tell you yet because I haven't fully played it out very much. So anyway, but that's Hexx, word game flipping game. Word game flipping game. You know where I'm going with this. It's been a long video so far. Put up with me. I still got a couple left. Lords of Baseball, 16 grand. What do you need to know about Lords of Baseball, right? You want to play with 16 people, you want to go head to head in a setting as one of the franchise owners with money and vision, you can do that. This is card-driven strategy. This reminds me more of 11 the Football Manager rather than like a head-to-head baseball game, if you will, because you're overviewing campaigns and series and seasons rather than the individual games themselves. The problem is, the issue right here, you're going to see right here, they're already at the top of the page here though, you have pledge levels. It's going to cost you $59 just to get a copy, and it's going to cost you, with expansions, it's going to be $84, and a 16-player version, $149 from that aspect of things. And if you want a wooden box, you can get, essentially pay double that for a wooden box. So take that for what you will. 2-player expansion there, 2-player expansion there. How do you play though? Let's get to that. Now, skipping past the stretch goals here, you get down to the gameplay. And the problem is there's no rule book. There's a couple videos from Board Game Geek and Undead Viking down there that you can check out. But basically, you have a short, medium, long game in terms of 3 seasons, 5 seasons, or 7 seasons. You're going to be taking an owner's role as you direct the team and the stadium and the progression of the franchise. The team's makeup, who's retiring, gaining competitive edges, championships, everything in that regard, everything that you would think about, not only just the on season of baseball, but also the off season, spring training, the regular season, followed by the postseason, the financial aspect of things, as well as retirement. Like I mentioned, the hot stove, which is the news and everything else that happens in the off season, right? As you prepare for next year. Like I said, here are the 2 videos. That's the problem though, is that's pretty much all the information on the page. So it seems like an interesting concept. Like I guess I'm just not as big a fan of the overview. This is more of like an economic style Euro management game rather than like a smash them up, go head to head, whose baseball players are going to win the individual game that you're playing, like a lot of the other baseball games out there. But like they said, you can play anywhere from 2 to 16 teams depending on how much you want to buy in right now. And the championship, if one of your teams is winning, you actually play a championship round as well from that aspect. So it's got a lot of parts from that, and so I think you really need to check out one of the videos, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you feel. But it's already 3 times its funding goal, so that's Lords of Baseball. Check it out. Next up, we have Hero, the emergency room board game relaunch, already almost 200% funded at $14,000. This is a hospital-based pandemic system, if you will. You've got 3 actions as you go around a doctor in the hospital trying to treat patients, call in staff or counsel, and adding resources that are going to allow you to, treat more people. And the basic actions are moving, running around from areas, treating patients, studying, and sleeping. Spending your actions wisely as you go across the board, utilizing everything that you can to treat the complex patients. And the rule book is over here as well. You can check it out. It's going to be just 16 pages long and give you a good glimpse of what those unique actions are. The basic gist of it, if you go through here, is that as you're going through all these actions, right, you're going to be treating those patients, you're going to be trying to manage them, complexity in terms of resources and actions to help get them out. But as you go along, if you don't treat them in time or successfully, then they're going to slowly lose these little timer tokens. And if you get, these timer tokens, it's basically like negative victory points. The other thing that you may see on there is like, you may see, okay, like I did before I looked at this, why would you ever have a sleep action, right? Like who would sleep in the hospital, right? You got to be awake all the time for 24 hours at a time. Otherwise, it's not a good hospital system, because why would you not want to abuse your employees into working that long without any rest or relaxation? I mean, it's clearly a great, anyway. The whole point of it, though, is that at the end of the game, depending on how long of the game you make it from the competitive side of things, if someone has not slept enough, then they are immediately eliminated from the game as a mechanic. So you have to utilize that as part of what you do and how you take it. And they actually give you a benefit of, if you spend all 3 of your actions resting on one turn, then you actually get 4 instead of 3. So there's a little bit of incentive there. And then they talk about, the consequences of causing too much trouble. And then you discard the following victory points, essentially, if you have a bunch of the negative trouble points. And then you count them all up at the end of the game and you win. There you go. There's 2 expansions that come along with this. And you get some deluxifications in terms of upgrades, like plastic ID badges and little miniatures as well for the add-ons, and plastic tokens if you really want. It's going to cost you about $40 for the early bird core pledge, which is going to be over before I go to bed tonight. And the early birds are going to be there, but then it's just going to be costing you like $76 afterwards for the plus. So I'm assuming it's going to be up a couple dollars by the end. So take that for what you will. The other pledge levels aren't up right now. But there you go. Hero, the emergency room board game, pandemic style with sleeping included. There you go. Next up, we have Kangaroo Cravings. I'm just going to talk about this one because I think it's a good educational goal. I'm not really sure how well this addresses it because I'm not an education specialist, but they've got $28,000 to $50,000 total, which is kind of strange because there's only got 100 people from that thing, which means almost every one of them is pledging nearly $300 right now. And I haven't looked at the pledge levels yet, but I'm kind of curious to see what they are now. Let's see, 50K, only a few there. Triple Roo. Let's go down all the way to the bottom. Let's see, here we go. One $10,000. There you go. One $10,000 one. And 2 $2,500 ones. Okay. And they're getting 100. I mean, I'm hoping school districts. Basically, this is a better way to, supposedly, of how to teach children to learn, because they should be learning by grade level at the 3rd grade, they say. And so they talk about how they're color coding these letters of the ones that you should be able to just be phonically reading, and then the red means that you can't phonically sound out what it is. Because if you think about the English language, right, like my kids are in Spanish immersion. Spanish is literally phonetic. They have sounds for every single letter, and every single letter pretty much always does that sound. English is just a considerably screwed up language when it comes to sounds that words and letters should make versus do make. I was reading Reddit earlier today, and it was like, it was a long time ago that was before was, is. Think about that for a second and then, you know, come back to the video with me. But that's essentially what you're getting in here, is you're trying to explain it a little bit better in that sense. So I just wanted to cover it because it's good educationally. Now, whether or not the product is really as good as they're making it out to be, again, not an expert, but I thought I'd highlight it as well as a side note. Now we're going to go back over to GameFound, and it's going to remind me how much I do not like the GameFound setup in terms of the page. This is a game that I think is flying under a lot of people's radars and seems a little bit clever in the lines of like a sort of Tabriz-esque, Splendor-esque vibe. And this is Artisans, 2 to 4 players, 30 to 45 minutes. And so it really needs to give a little bit of a look-see, because essentially what you're doing is that's sort of the Azul vibe as well. You have these resources that you're going to be starting out with, and you put a pile of resource cards, depending on the number of players, and you put 5 of them face out. And so you have 2 different sections of the board that you're essentially playing. You have the market and you have the crafting area. And so on your turn, you're going to be going to one of these areas and doing one of the actions. You can only hold 6 resources in your hand at a time. And those are going to be used to develop the resources that are present on the board that will allow you to craft at higher levels, depending on how many you have there in the first place. So what you're going to be doing is, if you go to the market, you just grab one of these cards, right? And you grab and you grab and you grab. And if it runs out, then you just keep grabbing until you get to 6. Or if you reach 6, then you have to trade with what's down there. And it goes until somebody grabs this first player marker in the center instead. And so they get to be first in the next round. And so then after somebody grabs it, everyone else gets one more turn. Now, if you go to the other area, the crafting area, then there are recipes for crafts that you have to make based on the resource cards that are in your hand or on your tableau in front of you. The tricky part is, if you go to the market, you can't go to the crafting area in the same overarching round. But if you go to the crafting area, then on your subsequent turn later in the same round, you can still go to the market area. So you're having to pick and choose when, how, and why from that aspect. The tricky aspect of this game that I'm still sort of struggling with is these the textiles that you're going to be putting down. If you go over the rulebook, they give a little bit of a summary of the development of the materials. And essentially what you do is you take a look at the one resource in your hand and you develop them and you put them down on the board. And then that counts as like the level 1. And then you do a different one later on, and then you do a different one later on for level 2 and level 3, and the level 1s are all worth 1 point, the level 2s are all worth 2 points, and the level 3s are all worth 3 points, etc., etc., etc. And so every material you have, though, can be developed up to level 4, and every level 4 card then obviously grants you 4 points. The tricky part is, if you develop the same material more than once, you actually have to put less cards down subsequently. So if you put down 4 cards for the purple one here for the first time around, the next time you can put 4, 3, 2, or 1. And so if the second time you only do 2, so then the third time, if you want to develop a third time, you can only put 2 or 1. So I mean, that's kind of weirdly unintuitive. So I'm not really sure what to make of that aspect of the game as a whole. But that'd be the thing I'd like to see in a little bit of action from some of these videos, which I may be checking out from that standpoint, because this is another one that sort of has that vibe to it, but it also has sort of a I want to try before I buy vibe as well. How to play, rules, they run you through some of the aspects over here of how you're developing these different things, and then you play through 12 rounds, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. So let's see, what are we talking price point wise? 35 euros. Let's go back up here because it's all the way at the top. You have a playmat and premium sleeves at the unlocked level. So, I mean, that's probably the issue, is the basic pledge level. And if you want deluxeifications, it's going to be a whole lot more. And nowadays, if you don't have a whole lot of people that want the deluxeifications, something like this isn't going to fund very well. And I think that's probably why you're seeing what it is. Otherwise, it looks like a decently solid concept. So, we'll kind of see where it goes. It's got a couple weeks left, but that's an uphill battle right now. So we'll kind of see what Artisans has going for it in the future. Next up is Varmints. This is sort of like a 2-player MOBA battling game, only you're like raccoons and skunks and mice or rodents instead of like superhero fantasy, cyberpunk-esque fantasy battlers, if you will. And you're just trying to empty the junk out of the other person's trash bins. And you've got 3 trash bins that you're going to be putting characters or rodents in front of that are going to be blocking attack-wise, defense-wise, or ability-wise people from grabbing, or the other person from grabbing your junk in your trunk in the trash bins. And so if they get all of yours, you lose. So that's the essential gist of it. There's going to be asymmetric powers. There's going to be additional power-ups that you can put behind your original guys to give them some more support. And so that's what you're going to be doing in terms of backups and speed and boosting so that you go first before your opponent. So if you want to do that, though, you need to pay for it by discarding a backup. But then, you're going to not have as much support from that side of things. $20 is going to get you the game, though, which is kind of a nice price as a 2-player game. Retail pledge levels. You can get 12 at a time there. That's pretty freaking sweet. Prints, whole bunch of prints apparently. Okay, take that for what you will. And they're funded, so check it out if you want. I mean, that's everything you need to know about Varmints. So GameFound, boom, Next up, we're going to be talking about this one. I really want to highlight this one as well as sort of a sleeper hit. This is an abstract game. This is Wana. Now, you may not know this, but Kanat here, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Sadam Watana, is abstract designer, and I have his other 2 previous games. And I'll put that out there that they're very solid abstract game. This one is a little bit like a version of Go, essentially. And you have these marbles that you are moving, and you can see that there's a circle around the board, and that's the pattern in which they can either move circular that way, or they can move orthogonally. And so essentially the game is you move yours as far as you can along a line, and you're trying to trap so that one person's cannot move at all. So if you have one marble that cannot move whatsoever, you lose. And that's where the interesting aspect of this game comes in. And so again, this looks like a great concept. I would argue that this one probably looks more accessible to me and overall better than his first 2. And if you're not familiar with the first 2, the more recent one, Sayu, and the previous Aero, which I reviewed as well already on the channel, and I'll be having a review for Sayu probably out in the next month or so as well from that standpoint. So if you're looking for something more modern abstract wise, this is really cool looking. And it runs you through just some GIFs here, and that's all the rules. That's all the rules, folks, and you just go. It's cool. It's cool. You need to give this one a shout out. Give this one a look-see. It's not funded yet, but if they get another 20 or 30 people, and if you 20 or 30 are watching this right now, boom, go support them. Show them what you got. Next up, we have Die of the Dead. I'll have this expansion, maybe some talking about it in the next week or 2 or so, but I have the base game that I'll be putting out a review of, the dice drafting variant, which is what the Ofrenda is offering, I believe, where you're no longer dice allocating, your dice drafting from the coffins in reverse, and then the Xolo expansion, which is going to be giving you ways to mitigate some of the randomness that goes along with it, and make it a game that makes it really a lot better. That's sort of the vibe I get off these expansions, just with the little that I know about them from the Board Game Geek page, as well as looking at it on here. I didn't realize the Ofrenda also offers a solo mode there. It's a beautiful looking game, but I think it could use these expansions just because it feels a little bit all over the place with just the base game alone. In some nice, unique ways, in terms of some of the randomness and luck and rolling from that aspect. So I like what they're putting out here, and it runs through all the mechanisms. I won't bore you with what it is, but essentially you're taking these dice, you're drafting these dice in terms of like using actions to get them into your reserve to your action pool, and then your action pool into the coffins. You're rotating the coffins around. You're trying to get dice pulled from the 4th coffin that get placed onto the stairs, and then if they get placed onto the stairs all the way up to the top of the stairs, then you win. That's the base game. Like I said, the Xolo is offering a way to mitigate the dogs sniffing out what's in the coffin, so it's allowing you to have some asymmetric abilities in order to figure out what's where, instead of just being more of a pure random memory sort of situation potentially as well. And then, like I said, the Ofrenda is going to reverse the whole thing and do it from that side of things. Engraved dice, postage is going to be whatever it is, and it's an indie game from Radical 8. So if you're interested in this one, give it a look-see. Check out my review coming in the next week or so as well. Next up, we have Seasons of Arcadia, and this is another abstract game. This is a very beautifully sculpted abstract game, just like Die of the Dead there. And the difference with this, opposed to the other abstract we're looking at, is just a little bit more complicated checkers, if you will. You basically have this grid that you're going to be placing down your lords, and you're going to have 2 of the 4 seasons on each side, and you're going to be taking 3 actions per turn. And those actions are move, jump, or place. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be having to take an action. Since you have 2 different types of lords on the board, each of them is going to have to take a turn. Doesn't matter which one of them on the board, but you're going to have to take 2 actions with one season and 1 action with the other. And like I said, the rules are move to an adjacent space, place a lord down onto the board next to another adjacent lord, or jump them, and you can jump more than once in order to then replace with your own lords. As long as there's a space in between, you can continue jumping. If you jump one of your own lords of the same season, you can do that, or you can jump over the lords of the opposite team, the opposite opponent, their lords, and then you replace them with one of your own. Then the first one to get all 12 of their lords on the board wins. So that's the gist of the game. $30 right here for the early bird, and I think you should really be looking at this. This is another nice little abstract game, Seasons of Arcadia. Next up, we have Fashion Game. This is a Japanese game which has $2,000 of its $1,600 funding goal, 71 people as well. Very similar across the board here. This is more of an apples to apples-esque fashion themed game, if you will. There's 2 different ways to play it. They talk about here about 20 minutes each. They run through, there's no English rules, like full rules set here. If you want to read the Japanese rules though, they've got that. You can check that out. But they give you a general overview on the page of how you're going to be essentially doing this. And the first one is sort of a family-friendly, fun guessing game where people put out this card to which theme is expressed, and you take the cards in your hand to try and match that theme, and then everyone votes on which one they think expressed it the best. And then the second one is that you're going to be doing the editor's request, where the editor says, hey, here's some words to describe an outfit, and then you do the same thing. You make an outfit and present it, and then the editor, basically like apples to apples, chooses the best one that you want. So that's the gist of the game. Yeah, it's going to cost you $20. There you go. Wasn't expecting to talk about this one, but it came out of nowhere, so want to talk about it. Fashion game. Last up here, very last up of a very long week and very long video, Haunticulture, $3,200 of $2,200 goal. It's a game that is played over 3 phases, where the first phase is essentially laying down cards. You start with 6 monster cards in your hand, and you're laying them down into a grid of a collected space, if you will, either 3x3 or 4x3, depending on how many players you're playing with. Then you take one of the 6 cards from your hand, and you have 3 turns to do this, and you play one of them in said grid, and they're going to be able to activate special abilities when you lay them down, because all of them are going to have abilities at the top of the cards. And based on that, they're also going to potentially have abilities on the bottom of the card as well that are going to be activated if they're like third of a kind in a row, or if the row is full, or just, other effects that are going to take place. And they give you an example right here. Then what you're going to be doing in an alternative as one of your 3 actions is you can actually hire new monsters into your hand for future use. Now, when this grid is all full, then you go over to the next phase of things, and you get rewarded based on who has the most presence or most ability in each of these rows and columns. And then they give you the rewards that are in the greenhouse spaces at the end of the rows and columns. How you determine that is by tallying up the power there, and then it determines that, like I mentioned. And then you have the planting phase. On your own individual boards, you're going to be planting these tiles in your gardens. And then this is going to be more of the spatial element of things, where having things next to each other, having, like they say, these gloomy blooms just alone by themselves will score 2 points no matter what they're next to. And so you're going to have ornaments that you're going to be putting down. You're going to have plants that you're going to be putting down, how they're best placed to score you the points. Things like pumpkins and moonflowers and evil eye apples and blood oranges are going to have special arrangements that are going to get more points in that way. And if you're one of those people in the rows that has less, you can just get money to buy stuff more in the future. Advanced scoring to go all in one with it here. We'll skip over this. And then the cleanup phase at the end, where all monsters are, taken and put in the discard pile. And then you have the ability to just restock and replay it again. Winner with the highest score at the end of several rounds, 4th round, wins. That's it. That's Haunticulture as a whole. What's the price point here? Let's see. It's going to be $31. Not too bad. Deluxe is going to be $54. So a few videos here, a few explanations on this, a few stretch goals that they're starting to unlock as well. So there you go. Nice little Halloween themed Haunticulture. Check it out. Side note here at the very end, like injection here, like this was a super long video and a super long week. And again, Patreon support is absolutely imperative that I'm able to do this on a weekly basis. As weird as that sounds, it's not imperative. Who am I kidding? It just makes it worthwhile when I'm putting out this hour to 2-hour video on all the crowdfunding roundup. So hopefully it's helpful, hope it's useful. Anyway, there you go. That is the roundup. Everything that you need to know about all of the big ones, as well as everything else in between. I mean, this is a massive week for just crowdfunding going in general, because you saw a lot of like low 4 and 5 digit figures that were still very respectable from good games. And even we saw that last week. So this has been an absolutely crushing span of like 2 weeks so far in crowdfunding. I would dare say even like maybe 10 days. Absolutely freaking massive. Now, the beginning of November is going to be slight dip, but there are still some big names in the first 2 weeks as well as later on in the month, but just not nearly the depth from top to bottom necessarily. So take that for what you will. I liked doing that speedrun one from last week. So I'm not sure I'm gonna do that speedrun one every week, because I don't want to do like the same like 15 projects every single week and give you my, but there was a good thought on the Board Game Geek comment section of where I posted that video on the blog. Go to that, by the way. If you're one of those people watching this on YouTube, maybe I'll click the link down in the description below so you can go over to the Board Game Geek. Give me a thumb on there, right? To give me the Board Game Geek front page. Like, I've always wanted to be one of those featured like spotlight creators on Board Game Geek, but I feel like you've got to be like, right? Come on. I can't not ask, Anyway, anyway. But I really did like doing that speedrunning thing. And as I was going to say on that little tangent there, as I totally got sidetracked and lost my train of thought, one of the Board Game Geek users, viewers, said, hey, maybe you should do a thumbs up, thumbs down sort of thing on it, right? Like, so while I'm talking about it, just kind of give you my, yeah, or sort of thing. We do all Roman Colosseum, if you will. Otherwise, that's it. A lot of stuff, a lot of time. This is a long video. This is a long video. So If you made it through any portion of this, I appreciate it, and it's always appreciated. You know, I think we're probably going to maybe get, no, I don't think we're even going to break 7K by the end of the year at this point. You know, it's the end of October, and I think we'll maybe get another like 200 or 300 people, and I think we'll be close to 7,000, but yeah, it's okay. I'm working on it. Hopefully this weekend as well. I just figured out, hopefully, how to work the overhead camera better. And so we're going to try this and see if I can actually make this thing work. And if I can, it's going to look awesome. And my reviews and some of my other thoughts on games are going to be really cool. If not, well, I'm just going to be really depressed. Just kidding. It's just going to be a frustration point because I'm not techie. I'm working on it. Okay, that's all I got. Stay tuned. I got a Patreon. Patreon people pay me more than YouTube does. And so if you really like me doing the independent thing, I really appreciate it because it also has helped me get a lot of games to be able to talk to you guys about in the first place. Whether or not they're huge hits on crowdfunding or not, people will pay attention to me. And the Patreon people, as a shout out at the end of the video here, are the ones that have really helped, you know, in addition, make that possible. So shout out to them as well. Boom. Massive props. Have a great day. I need to update the Patreon page. Weekend project. There you go. Homework assigned. Stay classy. See you around. Ha ha! And you didn't think you could have homework anymore as an adult. You're wrong.